Hello everyone and welcome to another Endgame episode with Coach B and MasterChess.com. In this episode, we're going to take a look at the positions that involve a rook and two connected passed pawns versus rook. This type of endgame is usually won by the side with the two pawns. However, difficulties arise when the pawns are on the edge of the board or if one of the white pieces is passive. In that case, a draw can be achieved. So in this first position, we could see that white has the connected passed pawns on the side of the board. And also, black managed to set up a blockade. His king is in between the pawns, and also the rook on a6 protects him from any side checks. Here, black achieved the draw. And there's not much that white can do to prevent black from drawing. So let's take a look at a couple of tries. Well, first, white has to get the black king out of his strong position. So let's go ahead and try to do that with the rook. So let's say rook to b4. After this, black will respond with rook to b6. Again, he wants to protect against those side checks. Here, rook to d8. After that, black can play rook to b4 check. And now white can reply with king to e5. And here's a critical moment, an excellent move, rook to b7. Checking the king with rook to b5 will simply be met with rook to d5, blocking that check. And here black cannot capture the rook as that will lead into a winning pawn endgame. After rook takes d5 and king captures back, black cannot capture the backward pawn as the other pawn will promote. Coming back, if black makes the mistakes of capturing the pawn on g5 here, well, he's going to lose this game. All white has to do is simply march that pawn forward, and now black cannot prevent him from promoting. After rook to h4, that pawn will promote, black will have to sacrifice the rook, and white will win the game. Coming back, another mistake would also be rook to g4. And here I'm just going to fast forward to the correct continuation. And now black cannot prevent checkmate from happening. His king cannot move, so just waiting with the rook with rook to a8 will lose to pawn to g7, checkmate. And coming back, if he tries to prevent that pawn from moving with rook to b6, well, rook to f8 is also checkmate. After rook to b7, there's not much that white can do here. If he tries to get the king out with rook to g8 check, after king to h7, let's say rook to e8, moving the rook to g7 here with check does not work because after rook takes g7, pawn takes g7, and king takes g7, this is a drawn endgame. And I'm just going to fast forward through the moves. And here, black achieved a draw by stalemate. So coming back, after king to h7, let's say rook to e8, there's two ways that black can draw here. He can move the king to g6. After king to f4, rook to b4 check, king to e5, rook to b7, repeats the position with an equal game. We're coming back after king to h7 and rook to e8. Here, black can also try rook to b5 check. After king to f6, black can sacrifice the rook by taking on g5, and if the white king captures back, this is also stalemate. So coming back from the beginning, we saw that black here achieved the draw due to the fact that white's pawn were on the edge of the board, and black managed to set up a blockade with the rook and the king in between the pawns. If we move white's pawns towards the center one square, we will see that here white will have an easy win. So this position is very similar to the previous position, except white's pawns have shifted one square towards the center. Now, here white has an easy win. After rook to e4, let's say rook to b6, here white can force a winning endgame with rook to e6 check. It's very important that the kings are in opposition because after the trade happens, white needs to be able to outflank the black king. If you're not familiar with this concept, I encourage you to watch my video on outflanking, but you'll see the result in this example. And after rook takes e6 and pawn takes e6, here white is winning. It doesn't matter which pawn black captures, white is going to be able to outflank the black king. If he captures the pawn on e6, well, here white will outflank black king on the g file. So he's going to go to g5. And now he created a wall together with the pawn, and black cannot make any progress. He's going to be forced to retreat back to e7 after king to h6 and king to f8. And white will move the king to h7, securing the promotion of his pawn. And then he's going to be able to promote the pawn and win the game. And coming back, If instead of capturing the pawn on e6, black instead is going to capture the pawn on g6, well, here a similar game will follow. White will be able to outflank the black king, moving the king to e5, and now the squares f6 and f7 are controlled by white, and black needs to retreat to g7. After king to d6, king to f8, and king to d7, again, white has secured the promotion of his pawn and simply going to promote and win the game. And in the end, I want to go over another position where black can achieve a draw, even though the pawns are in the center, due to the passive position of white's pieces. So in this position, we could see that the white king is cut off by the black rook, and he cannot participate in the battle. The ideal position of white's rook, if his king is cut off, is defending the pawn on d3 from the d file on d8. However, on h3 or d1, black is able to draw. So after something like king to f6, well, here the rook will simply retreat to e1, keeping that king locked out of the position, not able to help his pawns. After something like rook to g3, well, rook to e2. Black is simply going to keep the white king out of the game, and white will have to try something different. The only other thing that he can try, since his king is blocked out, is checking the king on g4. Well, after this, black can capture the pawn on d3. After pawn to c5 and rook to c2, rook to g5 defending the pawn that's now attacked, king to c4, king to e6, king to b5, king to d6, white still cannot make any progress. The black rook simply needs to stay behind the pawn, so let's say rook to c3. After rook to h5, rook to c2. Moving the pawn to c6 with the discovered check will simply be met with king to b6, and now there's nothing that white can do to prevent black from taking that pawn. And if that pawn marches to c7, will simply be taken on the next move with an equal game. If the king moves away from the pawn, black is simply going to capture that pawn with an easy draw. So as we've seen in this video, if you are playing with two connected passed pawns, always try to prevent the defending side's king getting in between the pawns, and also try not to get your king cut off from the action. If your king is cut off from the action, the best square from defending those pawns will be in front of the pawns on the same file as the backward pawn. Alright, thank you so much for watching this video. I encourage you to visit my website, masteryourchess.com, where you could practice this position. And also stay tuned for the next position, where we're going to take a look at those connected passed pawns being on the side and how white needs to play that position. That position is a little bit more challenging, so I'm going to devote a whole video for that. So see you soon. If you liked my video, please subscribe and don't forget to check out my new website, masteryourchess.com, where you can learn, practice, test, and master your chess knowledge.